Hello, everyone. I am Jean-Luc Rothenburger. I am a dietitian in Switzerland, and I wanted to share some interesting aspects about behavior change with you. So, this video is not about diet in particular, but more about changing to a healthy diet. And a healthy diet here means a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables, and this diet excludes all animal products and excludes all oils. So starches, potatoes, bread, pasta, beans, lentils, chickpeas, millet, oats, these kinds of foods, some vegetables, some fruit, and no animal products and no oils. And be careful with nuts and olives and soy products, as these are more calorically dense and you might gain weight off of them. So, for many people who understand the dietary principles I was just talking about, it is hard to change to this kind of diet and then to maintain this kind of diet. So, the following material is supposed to help you in transitioning and maintaining a healthier diet. Now, starting this and understand this is just to get the material out. I might do a more fancy version of this later for the channel. This is really just to get the material out, and it should work nevertheless. So when we talk about diet change, I would like to shed light on both sides of this, right? So if we change our diet to more starches, no animal foods, if we change our diet, we have certain benefits off of it. So, but we also have certain, or potentially have certain negative aspects of this dietary change too. So this would be the table, I guess I should call it. On one side, we have the positive aspects of changing our diet, and on the other side, the negative. And if you think about positive aspects when switching to a healthy diet, then of course what comes to mind is your health overall, your appearance, but also in this kind of diet, a starch-based diet, you are better off financially, so you save a lot of money because unhealthy foods often are more expensive than healthy foods. And you help the environment because, as we know, animal products are responsible for a lot of pressure that their production has on the environment. And then also we have beneficial social aspects of switching to a starch-based diet, as because animal products require a lot of grains, and often richer countries buy these from poorer countries, which raises pressure on the food prices in those countries. So if you make the transition to a starch-based diet, you help the world in social aspects as well. And then, of course, the last positive aspect here on this list would be if you switch to a plant-based diet, naturally you do a lot for the animal welfare as you decrease suffering in the animal kingdom. Okay, so those are the positive aspects that you benefit from when you change your diet to a healthier diet, which is based on starches. But we also have to look at the potential negative aspects, right? Because what makes it difficult for people to change their diet and maintain it is not that they do not understand these potential benefits once they are being taught about them. What makes it difficult for them is that they feel they have certain negative aspects too while they transition to a better diet. So usually it comes down to 3 points. One argument often is that it requires a lot of effort, right? So if you change your diet, it requires a lot of effort. You might have to prepare foods for the upcoming days, right? Because everything around us in our societies very unhealthy, that is being sold out there, also in restaurants and at work. So you might have to prepare a lot of food all the time. You might have to plan, and also you might have to plan. You might have to learn how to cook new things, right? If you change your diet from an animal-based diet to a starch-based diet, which is low in fats or no oils, you might have to learn a couple new things. So, of course, this is effort, right? Then, in addition to that, you are facing situations in society where you do not get any healthy food at certain meetings and what have you, right? You go there and there is nothing for you to eat, so you might have to organize beforehand of these meetings, of these gatherings, that you have something to eat, or you might have to explain yourself while being there why you do not want to participate in this or that kind of food. So all of these things, of course, are effort. That is 100% true, right? So we will look at a potential different viewpoint in this in a moment. I want to share the other 2 points that are potential negatives when changing your diet. And the second one after effort would be compensatory eating or compensatory eating, right? So often what people do is they use foods to sort of calm their minds if something bad happens, or they face difficulties in life. Often what people do is they calm their minds with the distraction of unhealthy foods, because it does something to your taste buds and therefore might, distract you from your problems. So we will look at that too. And the third argument makes it difficult to change and or maintain a more healthy diet is that you might potentially lose pleasure in your life, as of course unhealthy foods often are seen as very much pleasurable regarding your taste buds, right? So those are the 3 things on the negative side. We have effort when you change your diet. We have the issue of compensatory eating that you might lose if you stop eating unhealthy food, so you can't distract yourself anymore with certain foods. And then potentially you might lose pleasure if you change your diet to a more healthy diet. So overall, it looks like this, right? You have certain positive aspects, health, appearance, and such, and you have some negative ones. So let's start with the argument of effort, as we will focus on these particular arguments here, the negative aspects of changing your diet. Let's start with the topic of effort. So yes, it is absolutely true, right? If you change your diet, you will have an effort that you might have to take. As I said, you have to cook, to prepare, to plan, to learn new things, to sort of justify yourself in front of other people. And let's look at the other side too, though, because that's important. Yes, you do have certain efforts, but what if you do not change your diet, right? If you leave everything as is, you do not change, you keep on eating unhealthy foods, you do not improve your diet. So what you then would have to face, as we see on the positive list here, how about your health? Would it be an effort too to sort of carry bad health, to sort of live with the consequences on your health, which are detrimental, right? You might get heart disease, cancers, diabetes. And then how about your appearance? Is it an effort too to walk around not looking your best, right? The way you're supposed to look, the way you deserve to look, trim and healthy. Would that be an effort too, right? And then how about the financial aspect? It is literally an effort to go to work and earn money, which you then spend on unhealthy foods, which, as said, are often more expensive than healthy foods. So you do have effort there too if you don't change your diet. And then, of course, the environment and the social aspects, and then what goes against the animals because of all the factory farming and the killing of billions of animals every year. So you have to carry that burden too, and always like neglect it in your head, and justify all these things, right? So we could say, in summary, to the first point of effort when we change to a healthy diet, yes, absolutely, it is an effort to change your diet. But if we do not change our diet, we cannot say automatically, well, then we have no effort, right? Because then we face all this against us. So, if this comes up in your life again, you want to change your diet and you realize, all right, I got to take some time to prepare my food, or to learn how to make new dishes, or what to shop for when going for groceries, all these kind of things. And when justifying or explaining to your friends and relatives that you changed your diet, if it comes up again in your thoughts, all right, this is just too much effort, then take a step back and remember, yes, it is effort, absolutely. But if I do not do it, I do not have no effort. Okay? And in my view, these here, if we don't change our diet, this might be a lot more effort than to prepare some food every day. Okay, so that was the first one. Let's go on to the second negative point, the compensatory eating. As I said, people use foods to sort of calm their minds, to distract them of their daily problems, maybe potential tragedies, right? You know the old cliche of women when they have problem in their partnership, what do they often eat? It's often said that they eat ice cream, chocolate, these kinds of things. So usually compensatory eating, as I call it, is not done with cucumber salad, but with very rich foods and very unhealthy foods in general, right? So, and this is, of course, an understandable behavior. You can not only do this with unhealthy foods, but you can also do it with a lot of other things, right? Like alcohol, you know that some people, if they are in trouble, they like to drink, right? Sort of drink their problems away. Or you might do it with other kinds of substances, drugs like heroin and what have you. Some people do it with shopping, excessive shopping. They go well over their limit of the credit card, right? Create debt because they just want to drown themselves in something else rather than feeling the effects of their current problems, which is completely understandable, right? So the problems might be different, and the means to compensate might be different too, but the principle is basically the same. So what we have here is P1. P stands for problem. So we have a certain problem number one, and the effects of this problem bother us. We don't like the feeling that this creates. We want to get rid of it. We want to feel something positive, something different. And now it can be very tempting to eat something bad, or as said, do something else that is detrimental to your life. Okay. Now ask yourself, is this a behavior that is just happening once in a lifetime, or is this rather sort of a lifestyle? So if we face problem, we just sort of always distract ourselves with something. I would say it's more like a standard behavior and not a one-time thing that we reach for something unhealthy when we do not feel good, right? So ask yourself, if you have P1 and you repeatedly now make poor choices, what do you actually now create next to P1? You are exactly right. I'm sure you guessed it. You create P2, problem number 2, meaning Initially, you only had one problem, right? But now you face a second one. Now you have less money, or you have a poorer health, right? You deal with the consequences of your ongoing wrong choices, right? So now you have two problems. And usually what happens with P1, if we do not take care of it, often what happens is that P1 doesn't just go away by itself, it might actually even grow, right? So we symbolize this with these pluses here. So P1 grows, and what does that do in terms of your need to go back to P2? It can increase this need to further create, to enlarge P2 as you keep on eating compensatory. And now, if you do this, if P2 grows too, meaning the negative consequences of your lifestyle, in this case, unhealthy eating, these consequences grow too. So, if P2 grows too, do you now have more or less resources than before to deal with P1? Well, it seems to be obvious, right? You have less resources, which backfire on your capabilities to deal with P1. So, and you see now, where are we now? I understand in English this is called a vicious cycle, right? A vicious cycle. So it's kind of a downward spiral. P1 stays, potentially grows, and P2 stays, potentially grows. So you end up with this kind of, yes, understandable behavior, but you end up with a much worse situation than you would have had it before. So, meaning, while we, I think, have to accept that P1 will always exist in some way, right? You can do whatever you want. Life always finds the next P1 for you. And as far as I learned, this is a good thing. Because if we step back and think about it, what does P1 do for us, right? What can it potentially do for us if we do the right thing? Because rather than numbing ourselves out and create P2, what should we do when P1 comes? I am sure you guessed it right again. We should solve it, right? Take care of it, understand it. Or if we can take care of it, accept it and deal with it in a healthy way. So the potential the P1s in life have, of course, is that we grow off of them, right? We grow because of them. We learn, we come forward, and think about how much do we learn if we do not face any problems? How big is the motivation to learn and take care of things if there is no pressure, right, pushing you in that direction? So actually, if P1 comes, we could even say, oh, that's great, I have another potential to come forward. And someone I appreciate a lot told me, the greater P1 is, the greater the potential for us to grow. So that's pretty powerful stuff, I think. Okay, so in summary, yes, it is absolutely understandable that we ate because of compensatory reasons, right? It is understandable, but it does not lead us where we want to be. We want fulfillment and a good feeling in our life, and this can only result of taking care of the P1s. So whenever it comes in your head, oh, now I want to do this, I want to reach for this because I have a problem with this, remember this picture, and replace it with this one, and then try to take care of P1. So this was the second point. of our negative list, huh? The effort, to be clear, right? Yes, it is an effort in diet change to change your diet, but it's not no effort to not change. And compensatory eating, while being understandable, does not lead you where you want to be. Now let's go to the last one. This is, in my mind, the most important one in behavior change. I think this is really the key to successful behavior change. And the argument now is, okay, if I change my diet, yes, I understand, I get all these positive aspects, right? Better health, better appearance, a more robust financial background, all these kinds of things, right? But I also lose pleasure. So for people, it's a constant battle then in their minds. Okay, on one way, I want to be healthy. On one hand, I want to be more healthy, look better, feel better, have more energy, more money, and I want to do the right thing, right? But on the other hand, there's the other side saying, okay, now I kind of deserve something to treat myself and all these kinds of things, right? Now, if I don't eat this, I lack pleasure. So it's a constant tug of war, right, between these two forces. Okay, so let's ask ourselves the question. If this one here, because we understand the effort is just a trap, the effort argument, the compensatory eating is also just a trap, right? It's just an illusion, these two things that we thought of being true. The pleasure, let's ask ourselves, what if it would not be a pleasure to eat unhealthy foods? What, just hypothetically, what if it would not be a pleasure to eat unhealthy foods? Would it then be easier to change to a more healthy diet? Would you say yes? Well, that is great, because I have very good news for you. It is not a pleasure to eat unhealthy foods. Let me explain why that is. And to understand this issue, I want to bring in conditioning. You probably heard this term before, conditioning. By conditioning, I mean the training of your mind to a certain to a certain opinion you are convinced of, to a certain behavior, think this is the right thing to do. So conditioning, a more hard term might be brainwashing, right? A more harsher term. So let's look at conditioning, and I want to make two examples of how powerful conditioning can be. Now, if you look at smokers, right? Alan Carr, of which my work in behavior change is based, Alan Carr, who found this method to easily quit smoking, he pointed out that people, when they start to smoke, they don't really like to smoke, right? Which is true, right? They can't even inhale the smoke. If you observe young people trying to inhale toxic smoke, what happens is they cough, or they get very nauseous. Maybe you even throw up, right? So, but if someone is strong enough, right? Interestingly, you need to be strong to start smoking, because if you're weak, you can't just, climb over that wall. It's hard to start smoking. But if you're strong enough, then eventually, sometime later, 2-3 months or what have you later, the same cigarettes of the same brand all of a sudden do not taste disgusting anymore, but people find them enjoyable, right? So what happened is they develop a tolerance and an addiction of the cigarettes, the tobacco, and the illusion sort of comes up that it is a pleasure to inhale toxic smoke. Now, this idea can go so far as like maybe 50 or 60 years later, if a physician tells this particular person to now stop smoking, otherwise they might die in 2 years. Sometimes these people tell the physicians, right? They might actually tell them, no, I do not stop smoking because everything and everyone betrayed me, but these friends in the cigarette package, right, they were always there for me, so this is the last thing I will give up. And they continue to smoke even though their life is actually on the line. So there you see, of course, there is nicotine addiction involved, but if you study the work of Alan Carr, you see it's a mental game, right? To quit addiction, to quit addictive behaviors. If they understand that it was an illusion, that it was a pleasure to smoke, if they really understand this, they can just quit smoking and they are not bothered at all anymore. So conditioning is a very powerful tool. And now let's look at the second example of conditioning, where we see how powerful it actually can be. And this is, maybe you heard the term child soldiers or children soldiers, right? I'm sorry, I do not want to shock you. This is a very harsh example of conditioning, but sometimes it is effective to use, sort of a black and white kind of approach. So there are countries that are in war who abduct children from their families and then they train them to become killers, really, murderers. And one method that is apparently being used is that they are being ordered to shoot a person which stands somewhere over there at a wall. And the children usually do not want to do this. They might ask, why? Why should I harm this person? Or no, I don't want to do that, right? And what you can do is you sort of blindfold them so they can't see, right? They physically can't see their surroundings anymore. And then 10, 15 grown-ups yell at this person armed with a rifle, and now shoot, pull the trigger, do it. And you can imagine. So eventually the young child will pull the trigger, with the result that the other person collapses. And what they then do is they remove the blindfold, and the young person sees the result of their action. And what then the people around this person do is they all start to clap and cheer. So if you think about it, I guess you can imagine that if you repeat this sort of behavior towards a certain young individual, that this might change things on a very foundational level, right? So ask yourself now, if you meet this person that went through this conditioning, if you meet this person 10 years later, and you belong to the group of people that this person has been told these are your enemies, what will this now young adult want to do to you? You are right. They want to harm you, might want to kill you. Now, if you, in this situation, then say to this person, stop it. No, you don't want to do this. This is just conditioning. It's just brainwashing. You don't want to harm me. We're not enemies. Ask yourself, does this do something then? Will this stop the young person, the young adult now, from wanting to harm you? No, it doesn't. Because that is the very nature of conditioning. Even if you tell this person what happened, they might not be able to change anymore, to leave their viewpoint and to look at the situation in a logical way. That is just not an option anymore. So what we can see in these two examples, and I apologize again for the drastic example, I know. But what we can see in these two examples is that you can bring a human being to the point where they harm themselves or someone else while being completely convinced this is the right thing to do. Even though sometime before that they didn't want to do it at all, or they couldn't do it at all. So that is the power of conditioning. So keep this in mind for a moment. Let's move on. Now, if you think of food, hunger, and pleasure of eating, a natural thing, right? This is a natural thing. If food wouldn't be a pleasure, nobody would do it. So we would starve to death. So the system is very set up, very smart, right? You give a life form a need, a feeling that it has to satisfy, otherwise it suffers. So we get hungry. And if the life form then eats, if it feels good, this is then, the engine to do the right thing for this life form. So survival is then ensured. Think a moment about sexuality. Same situation, right? So sexuality, to live out your sexuality, most people would probably agree this is a, for humans, pleasurable thing. Why is that? Well, it would be far too dangerous to not make this a pleasure from, from nature, from a nature's point of view, because if it wouldn't be a pleasure, it would be far too dangerous for us not to live out our sexuality. So humanity would go extinct. So very, very simple, but very effective, smart system to ensure our survival, the survival of our species. Now, think about sexuality a moment. Imagine the situation, a person lives out their sexuality with another person and it feels good and everything. But now add to that situation the circumstance that while this person does that, while this person satisfies their need to experience sexuality, while this happens, they infect themselves with a certain contagious disease, or they are at risk of infecting them with any kind of sexually transmitted disease. And while this happens, the individual knows about it. Would you now say this situation is still experienced as a pleasure? Of course not, right? Of course not. You would say, no, absolutely not. How could this be a pleasure when I infect myself, or I know I might infect myself while I'm doing this? How could this be a pleasure, right? So immediately the barriers come down, right? The borders are closed. You just don't want to do it. You don't want to be in this situation because you want to survive. You don't want to get sick. You don't want to endanger yourself. Right? And people might say, yeah, but you do not die of eating bad foods immediately, right? You do not die of sexually transmitted diseases necessarily either, right? There are some diseases you can treat and that might not end up killing you, right? But it still wouldn't be a pleasure to live out your sexuality while being aware of a risk happening right now. You would not view it as a pleasure. You can ask yourself, did you ever hear anyone say, oh, okay, today I treat myself, I have birthday, so I will I live out my sexuality with this person over there. Yes, this person has HIV or syphilis or some other disease, right? But you know what? I have to treat myself, and I had a hard day, and here and then, and in a reasonable, all these kinds of things. You would never hear anything like that. If somebody would tell you this, if somebody would talk to you like this, you would think this person is completely insane. Yet, look at food. Have you ever heard, okay, this is not the most healthy food, but I will eat it because it's a pleasure. Okay, I have high cholesterol, but today I have birthday, so I eat all this ham and all these eggs and the cheese, all this kind of stuff. Have you ever heard things like that? Well, We all heard it, right? And might have said that at one point in time in our lives. So what happened? Why does it not work there in food? Why do we experience this situation completely different? And it has become a standard to eat unhealthy all day long, every day. Well, the answer is, as you might guess, conditioning, right? So you could not talk yet, maybe not even think yet consciously, and you already have gotten exposed to unhealthy foods, right? Your parents, well-meaning, of course, your parents already fed you the sugary foods, the fatty foods, right? And when you came home from school, okay, today you had good grades, so here is a dessert chocolate with all the cream on top of it. So the young person views this as a treat, really, and the other way around too, right? Children come home and they didn't have good grades or had some problems in school. So today, no dessert, the parents might say, right? So again, subconsciously, the young children view these things as very important, these unhealthy foods. And they also do something on your taste buds, right? That's why sugar and oils and salt gets mixed into food, because everybody knows it has an effect here, right? But if you step back, think about sexuality. Just because it does something to your body, if there is a potential that it harms your health, you do not want to do it, and you do not experience it as a pleasurable situation. In fact, you experience it as a very repulsive kind of thought, even, right? You don't want to have anything to do with that. So, as I said, it is not really a pleasure to eat unhealthy foods. Why you perceive this in this way, that unhealthy foods are pleasurable, is based on marketing and conditioning, really, right? We grew up with unhealthy foods, and ask yourself, how many times throughout my life did I see images around me with young, good-looking, healthy people eating the worst kinds of foods, and they are smiling and partying and celebrating? How many times did you see this, right? Well, actually, probably every day, multiple times, right? In the cinema, in newspapers, ads on TV, right? On the way to the bus, on billboards, all these kinds of things. And companies usually, marketing is expensive, right? Advertisement marketing is very expensive, and these companies usually do not throw out money just for fun, right? They know what they're doing, they know it's important, and it has an effect on our perception of the world. And in addition to the advertisement and to the way you grew up, everything around you, everyone around you lives this way. These foods are everywhere, all the time. In fact, if you go to a hospital because you had a heart attack, or you get brought into a hospital because of a heart attack, after you wake up, you might get the exact foods at your bed that brought you there in the first place. Or at a funeral, right? Some woman lost her husband because of a heart attack, and after the funeral, they all sit together and they eat the exact same foods that killed the widow's husband. Yeah, so again, if you step back from the entire situation, if you consider everything I just said, you can say now that this here, what we said, that this negative aspect of changing your diet, losing pleasure, is not real. It's just an illusion. Because ask yourself, how could it be a pleasure to eat something of which, while you are eating it, you think, oh, I shouldn't actually eating this? How could this be a pleasure? A real pleasure is something that tastes good and that you go fully, you're fully okay with eating it. There's nothing in your mind that thinks, oh, I shouldn't eat this. That's not pleasure, right? That's being trapped. Almost sort of like being addicted, being dependent of it. So, what do you do now with this? Because now, as you understand it now, it cannot be a pleasure to eat something that has the potential to harm your health and literally destroys the entire planet and sends animals through a hell, right? So since this can't be a pleasure, now we got to do something with this insight because it's conditioning, and conditioning doesn't just go away. You have to now decondition yourself or recondition yourself. You have to change your perspective, which we just did, but now you have to train it. This is the actual key to successful behavior change. You have to train this new kind of insight. So how do you do this? Well, you can train everything. Over here in Europe, we have manual shifted cars. I always use this example, and we have automatic cars. The manual ones are kind of disappearing because the electric ones come. So you do not have a clutch where you put your left foot, right, to shift gears, if you understand what I mean. So if you are used, in this example, if you are used to drive a manually shifted car, always using your left foot to change through the gears. So you do this, after a certain amount of time, you do this automatically, it's not a problem. But then you might have a problem with your car and you bring it to the garage, right? They fix it, you get a replacement car, which might be an automatic. So there is no left pedal for your left foot, there is no clutch. So what happens for the first, few days? Every time, if you want to do something with your car, if you start it and you want to drive off, your left foot might go into nothing, into empty. There's no pedal. So would you then, in this moment, tell yourself, oh no, I am so weak, I will never make this transition. This is such a strong habit. I have done this for 40 years. I just can't change. No, that's never what you would say. What you would say is, oh, that's just the habit from before. And if you tell yourself, which you do automatically in this situation, right, because you're a reasonable person, what then happens is over the next few days, the impulse of putting your left foot where there is no pedal anymore, this impulse vanishes until it becomes completely normal to drive an automatic car. And then when you get back your car that was in repair, what might happen in the beginning? Well, you might have forgotten that you have to push the clutch. So you can't really drive off, right? You shut down the engine, as you know it, right? So you have to retrain yourself, which then goes fast, right? But you have to recondition yourself. So these kind of habits you can easily change. It's just a matter of conditioning, of training. So what does this mean in terms of food? Basically the same thing. Every time the illusion comes, the wish comes, okay, now I want to eat this, and it's unhealthy. It will set you back in your goal of losing weight or of maintaining weight or of fixing your health, your cholesterol, your blood pressure, your blood sugar, what have you. Every time the idea comes to eat something that goes against your interest, you will then have to do two things. One is you have to eat something healthy. If you're actually hungry, you have to eat something healthy. You have to have your food with you, especially in this world out there where there is nothing healthy around you. You have to have your food, because if you're hungry, with this kind of conditioning in your head and this kind of environment out there, oh man, it is very hard to stay on track. So you have to eat something healthy, which, if you're hungry, is starch. That's the best energy for you. You have to eat starch. to ease your hunger. And if that's not enough, or if the idea just persists, right? Oh, I want to eat something unhealthy, I want to eat this or that. You have to remind yourself, as we did in the example with with car driving. If the impulse comes, I want to eat unhealthy, or this might be tasteful, oh, that would be such a pleasure to eat this or that. You have to tell yourself, no, that's just the old. That's just the conditioning from before. And then you eat something healthy. And in time, which is completely normal and not exceptional, in time, you will get to the point after retraining where you will stand there and you ask yourself, how could I ever have wanted to eat all this stuff everybody around me eats that literally kills them? That's how you will see it in the future if you recondition yourself. So, my prognosis for this whole situation in which we are now in the world with unhealthy foods, unhealthy eating, which is everywhere, right? It explodes everywhere on the world. That's why health is declining everywhere. My prognosis is in the future, people will look back at this time right now, and they will ask themselves, how was it possible that people in 2026 ate themselves to death, even though every 12-year-old could look up the images of reopened arteries if you stop eating all the meat and the oils and the cheese, right? How was it possible they still did that? And how was it possible people were convinced it is a pleasure to eat unhealthy? I think that's what the future will look like. And I can already see the teachers in schools waving their arms, desperately trying to make the children understand that people were not stupid back then when they ate that way and thought of this, that it was just a matter of what the norm was in society. As you might know from Switzerland, just an example, right? Women's right to vote here came very late. We have one particular canton, I think it was 1998, where the Supreme Court had to step in and say, no, now on this sort of state level of canton, you have to give your women the right to vote, right? So that was not that long ago. And I'm sure if you go back into the 70s and you were a young woman and you stood up and, I think we need the right to vote, that's the right thing. I am pretty sure the other women around you were not pleased with that idea. Even though you might say, yeah, actually, that might be a reasonable idea, right? But it was just not the norm. Or in maybe you think about separation, segregation, right, of races, black and white, right? That was once the norm, that they couldn't go to the same bathroom, right? Black and white. As far as I know, there were laws that prohibited that, right? And if we look a few years ago in the US, there was a black president. So imagine these days you would go to Washington, D.C. and yell out, there must never be a black president again, right? Only white. What would it cause now, right? And 60 years ago, 70 years ago, or whatnot, it was impossible to even think of that. So standards change in society. They can drastically change. And I think it is this insight. First, you need to know what to eat, right? It's a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables, no oils, no animal products. You take a B12 supplement. If you live in a place like Switzerland, you have to take iodine or salt, which has iodine being added to it, right? That's the first thing you gotta know. You gotta understand how to eat. And then the second thing is to understand that it was never a pleasure to eat unhealthy in the first place, even though it did something here, but this does not automatically mean it is a pleasure, right? So, in summary, behavior change. Excuse me. We covered effort. Yes, it is an effort to eat healthy. You have to prepare, plan, learn, right? But it is not no effort to not do it, because you will face consequences and you have to see those are or will be an effort to do. Second, compensatory eating, right? It is an illusion that you are better, that you are doing better when you face problems, you don't feel good, then you eat something that is not healthy and you just forget about your problems. You cannot enjoy this. How can you enjoy something that you just forgot about? The only way you will really feel good, you really will experience fulfillment, is to deal with the problem that you face in the first place. And then third, and in my view, the most important aspect, the pleasure, right? The idea that you will miss pleasure if you eat healthy is based on a wrong perception of the world. It's based on conditioning. There's a lot of money involved that people feel it is pleasurable to eat unhealthy. So always when this comes up, step back and say, no, that's just the old, that's just the conditioning. That's nothing for me anymore. I now eat healthy. And then you eat something healthy, right? So I guess that was it. That's what I wanted to tell you. I hope you can take something out of this, right? And that it makes it easier for you to transition to a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables, no animal products, no oils. The more you do that, the better you will feel, and the greater the effects on the environment and animals in a positive way will be too. Of course, B12, right? Potentially vitamin D, places like Switzerland, iodine. Keep these things in mind, and I hope that this video helps you in dealing with the situation society currently faces. All right, so greetings from Switzerland. All the best for you and your relatives and your friends. Maybe some other time. Bye now.